Before the great flood, before judgment fell upon the earth, there was a man set apart by God, chosen for his righteousness, honored for his closeness to the Almighty. He was taken beyond the veil into realms no mortal had ever seen. His name was Enoch, and what he saw will terrify you. But are you ready to follow where he was taken? It began with a divine call, carrying him from the world he knew to the edge of creation itself. There, Enoch beheld wonders beyond imagination and terrors that shook the soul, radiant realms of eternal joy and prisons of darkness for the rebellious. From the gardens of paradise to the storehouses of the stars, from the fiery rivers of judgment to the throne of the Most High. This is the Book of Enoch's journey through the 10 heavens. And what lies beyond the 7th heaven will change everything you thought you knew. But before we step into that journey, we must first understand the man who walked it, who Enoch truly was. Enoch was the son of Jared and the great-grandfather of Noah, a man whose life stood as a beacon of righteousness in a corrupt and violent world. He walked with God, not merely in word, but in a daily, unwavering intimacy that set him apart from his generation. His wisdom was unmatched and his devotion unshakable. Then, without warning, the veil between heaven and earth parted. 2 radiant angels appeared before him, their faces shining like the sun, their garments glowing with the light of the Most High. They called him by name, their voices carrying both power and peace, and told him he would be taken to behold the mysteries of heaven itself. Before departing, Enoch gathered his family. He looked upon his sons with a father's love and a prophet's urgency, urging them to remain faithful to the Lord. Do not turn away from the one who made heaven and earth, he warned, for all who forsake him will perish, but those who walk in his ways will live forever. With those final words, Enoch stepped into the calling that would take him to realms no man had ever seen. First heaven, the sea above the firmament. The wind lifted beneath Enoch's feet, and the world below faded into shadow. 2 radiant beings bore him upward on their wings, until the firmament parted, and they set him down upon clouds as solid as stone. Beneath him the earth lay like a vast map, but before him stretched a sea unlike any he had ever known, greater than all the oceans of the world combined. Its waters shimmered with colors beyond mortal sight, and its waves moved in perfect harmony, as though obeying an unseen command. From its edges, Enoch's gaze rose to behold 200 mighty angels. Each stood at their appointed post, governing the stars and the courses of the heavens. Their eyes never turned from their work, for every star's path was written and measured by the will of the Most High. Then the angels who guided Enoch led him to the storehouses of snow, vast halls of crystal light, guarded by sentinels of pure flame. They opened the gates, and he saw countless treasures of rain and dew, glistening like jewels, each drop kept in its appointed place. This, the angels told him, is the order of the Lord's creation. Nothing moves without his command. Every season, every storm, every star in its path, all are bound by his word. And Enoch trembled, for he understood that in heaven even the smallest drop of dew had a purpose. But beyond the clouds, a darker realm awaited. Second heaven, the chains of the apostate angels. The light of the clouds faded, and Enoch was drawn upward into a realm where no star dared to shine. Here the darkness was not like the night on earth. It was heavier, thicker, a weight upon the soul. Even the air felt bound in silence. Then, through the gloom, he saw them. Figures suspended in the void, bound in chains of unbreakable light. Their faces were twisted with grief, their eyes hollow with endless waiting. These were not men. They were angels, but stripped of glory, now prisoners. They swayed like shadows in a windless place, and a voice, low and trembling, broke the stillness. "Man of God, pray for us," "Speak to the Lord that he might release us." But Enoch, shaken to his core, answered, "Who am I, a mortal, to intercede for those who once stood before the Almighty? I do not yet know my own fate, nor who will pray for me." The angels bowed their heads, and chains clinked softly in the dark. His guides turned to him and spoke, "These are the apostates, those who defied the commands of God, who followed the will of their own hearts and the counsel of their prince. For their rebellion, they are held here until the day of the great judgment, when the sentence will be sealed for all eternity." Enoch's spirit trembled, for he knew that disobedience does not end in freedom, but in chains that will never be broken. And yet, ahead lay a place unlike any shadow, a realm overflowing with life. Third heaven, paradise and the realm of the wicked. From the suffocating dark, Enoch was lifted into a realm so radiant it was as if light itself had blossomed into a garden. Before him stretched paradise, trees heavy with fruit of every kind, their fragrance sweeter than anything born on earth. In the center stood the tree of life, its branches like woven gold and fire, its leaves shimmering with living light. Beneath its roots, two springs burst forth, one flowing with honey and milk, the other with oil and wine. And from these streams life seemed to pour into every corner of the garden. 300 brilliant angels kept watch here, their voices weaving an unending hymn before the throne of God. One of Enoch's guides spoke, "This place is prepared for the righteous, for those who endure persecution, who turn their eyes from iniquity, who feed the hungry and clothe the naked. Here they will dwell forever, and their joy will never fade." But then, the scene changed. Enoch was led to the northern edge of this heaven, and there the air grew cold and bitter. He saw a land of cruel darkness, where the ground cracked beneath frost and ice, yet flames leapt upward without consuming the cold. Rivers of fire twisted through the gloom. Merciless angels moved among the shadows, their weapons ready, their faces set like stone. "This," the guide said, "is the inheritance of the wicked, those who cursed their Creator, who defiled themselves with violence, greed, and unnatural sin. Here they will remain forever." The joy of paradise and the horror of judgment stood side by side, a vision Enoch could never forget. And still, the journey was far from over. But Enoch's guides made it clear, even paradise was not the final wonder. For above the garden and beyond the place of judgment lay a realm where the very lights of heaven kept their appointed paths. And it was to this place he was now carried. Fourth heaven, the gates of the sun and moon. The angels bore Enoch upward again, and before him opened a realm of blazing light. Here he beheld the sun and moon in their appointed courses, each moving with flawless precision through the gates of heaven. Enoch's guides pointed to 6 great gates in the east, each one vast beyond measure, through which the sun emerges in its season, and 6 more in the west, where it sets in glory. They showed him how the sun's path marks the days, months, and years, its circuit kept by 15 myriads of angels by day and countless winged ones by night. The moon, too, had its 12 gates, keeping the order of the months, its phases measured with mathematical perfection. But it was not only the lights themselves that caught Enoch's eye. Attending the sun were beings unlike any on earth, phoenix-like creatures, their feathers gleaming like molten gold, their forms vast, with the tails of lions and the heads of crocodiles. Each had 12 wings, and their bodies shone like the colors of the rainbow. They sang as the sun rose, their voices heralding the giver of light to the world. Enoch learned that the very balance of seasons, days, and nights rested on the order God had set here, a harmony the angels guarded with unceasing vigilance. And as the sun completed its course, Enoch was led onward to see what awaited in the 5th heaven. 5th heaven, the fallen watchers in silence. The light of the fourth heaven faded, and Enoch was carried into a place of solemn silence. Here stood the Grigori, giant angels, their forms towering higher than any mortal man. Yet their once glorious faces were withered, their eyes dim with grief, and their lips sealed in perpetual silence. No songs of praise rose here, no service was offered before the throne of God. Enoch's heart was troubled, and he asked his guides, "Why are these so silent, and why is their countenance fallen?" They answered, "These are the Grigori, watchers who once stood in the light of the Most High, but they abandoned their posts, descending to earth at the call of desire. They took wives from among the daughters of men and begot giants, bringing corruption and violence upon the earth. For this they were cast down, awaiting judgment." Hearing this, Enoch stepped forward and urged them, "Turn your hearts back to the Lord. Do not remain in defiance. Serve him again, lest you perish in his wrath." At his words, a tremor passed through their ranks. Then, breaking their long silence, they lifted their voices, a mournful, aching song that rose up toward heaven, pleading for mercy. But the decree had been set. Judgment would come, and their fate was sealed. Enoch's journey did not end here, for above the silence of the fifth heaven awaited the radiant hosts of the sixth heaven, the governors of creation. From the sorrow of the fifth heaven, Enoch was lifted into a realm of blinding splendor. Here, 7 bands of radiant angels stood in perfect order, their faces shining brighter than the sun, their garments shimmering with living light. There was no difference among them in beauty or glory, for all reflected the majesty of the one they served. Enoch's guides whispered, "These are the governors of creation." He saw archangels charting the paths of the stars, marking the rise and fall of the constellations. Others commanded the changing of seasons, calling forth the rains, summoning the harvest, and stilling the storms. There were angels over the rivers and seas, over every plant that grows, and over every creature that breathes. Nothing in heaven or earth was beyond their care. At the center stood the scribes, solemn beings who, with unerring precision, recorded every life, every deed, and every word spoken by man. Each scroll was laid before the face of the Almighty, and above it all, the air was alive with music beyond human imagination, a single unified song of praise rising ceaselessly before the throne. One of Enoch's guides leaned close and spoke in a hushed voice, as though even here the words carried weight. "Beyond the highest of these, above the light of the seventh, there lies a realm no foot has trod, no wing has brushed, a place even the archangels approach only when summoned. There the Almighty himself dwells in unapproachable glory." Enoch's heart burned within him at the thought, and he knew that each step upward brought him nearer to that terrible, holy place. Seventh heaven. The outer court of the thrones. Enoch was carried higher still. And then, in a single breathless instant, the light around him ignited. It was no distant glow, but living light itself, surging like a tide of fire, so pure and so fierce that it felt as though it might unravel his very being. His vision swam, his knees buckled, and the air trembled in his lungs. For he knew, beyond all doubt, the throne of the Almighty was near. Before him spread a vast and terrible beauty, the court of heaven, filled with 9 mighty orders of angels, each distinct in form and purpose, yet all bound in unbroken service to the eternal King. Nearest to the throne stood the cherubim, their countless eyes beholding the fullness of time, past, present, and yet to come. Beside them blazed the seraphim, 6-winged and aflame, their every breath a song of unending worship. Then the thrones, immovable and unshakable in judgment, the dominions wielding the authority of heaven like a scepter, the powers standing as immovable bulwarks against the forces of chaos. Beyond them, rank upon rank, stretching beyond sight, the angelic hosts without number, their ranks like the stars in their multitudes, Their voices rose together, not in a shout, but in a whisper that thundered through creation itself. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Heaven and earth are full of his glory. The sound struck Enoch like a wave, drowning every thought, every fear, every memory of earth, until only awe remained. Yet even as the glory of the seventh heaven consumed him, he felt it, a pull, faint yet undeniable, as though the throne itself were not the journey's end, but only the threshold of a mystery greater still. His guides did not speak. They only turned their eyes upward, toward that final realm above all realms, where no mortal had ever stood, and where even the highest seraphs dare not tread. Eighth and ninth heavens. From the searing brilliance of the seventh heaven, Enoch was borne still higher, until the air grew hushed and vast corridors of living light opened before him. This was the eighth heaven, known in the Hebrew tongue as Muzaloth, the chamber where the heartbeat of creation itself was kept. Here the seasons were born, the tender rains of spring, the heavy droughts of summer, the golden winds of autumn, and the deep stillness of winter. All were measured here, not by chance, but by the will of the Almighty. Along endless halls, the blueprints of time were etched in lines of shimmering fire. Angelic stewards walked these paths with the care of master gardeners, pruning, shaping, and guarding the flow of years. The constellations, which men know only as faraway sparks in the night, stood here as living sentinels, fixed in their stations, their movements precise as the turning of a great and perfect clock. Every shift of cloud, every change in the heavens was accounted for. Nothing in creation was left to chance. Yet my journey was not finished. I was lifted higher still, into the ninth heaven, called Kuchavim, the celestial stronghold of the 12 great constellations of the firmament. Each was a fortress of blazing light, suspended in the endless expanse like a gate of fire and crystal, guarded by its own host of mighty angels. Their watch was eternal, ensuring that the pathways of the heavens remained unbroken. And here, the stars themselves spoke, not with the voices of men or angels, but in a language of light and movement, a living scripture written across the void. Their silent testimony told of the order, the wisdom, and the majesty of the one who set them in place. Yet even as their radiance surrounded me, I felt it, the same pull I had sensed before. Beyond this final vault of stars lay the highest realm of all, the place where no mortal had ever stood, and where even the highest angels draw near only when called. The pull became stronger, not a force upon my body, but upon my very soul. The constellations dimmed behind me, as if even their ancient light could not follow where I was going. My guides did not speak. They only bowed their heads. Ahead, there was nothing. No stars, no seasons, no measure of time. Only an endless, blinding expanse, a threshold no mortal had ever crossed. And then, we crossed it. 10th heavens, the throne of the Most High. I was lifted above the vault of the stars, beyond the constellations, beyond the measure of time itself, until the air grew still and a brilliance unlike any before enveloped me. No shadow could survive here. No thought of earth could remain. This was the 10th heaven, the dwelling place of the Most High. In the midst of that living light stood the throne of God, high and lifted up, its radiance like 1,000 suns, yet purer than crystal and whiter than snow. Lightning danced in arcs of gold around it, and from its base poured rivers of fire that did not consume, but refined. At my side appeared Michael, the great archangel, his face shining like polished bronze, his voice a deep river of sound. He took garments woven of glory itself, brighter than dawn, softer than the first light of creation, and clothed me. Upon my head he placed a crown, and with oil from a vessel of sapphire, he anointed me for the task to come. Then the voice of the Almighty spoke, not in a language of men, nor even of angels, but in a sound that filled every part of me at once. And in that moment, I understood mysteries that had been hidden since before the foundation of the world. I saw how all things had come forth from nothing, the command of his word shaping the deep, summoning light from the void, setting every star in its place. I beheld the scrolls of destiny, where the names of the righteous and the wicked were written before the first sunrise. I understood the weaving of time, the purpose of every age, and the certainty of the judgment to come. Yet even in that flood of revelation, one truth burned above all. There is none beside him, and none can stand against his will. All that was and is and ever will be rests in the palm of his hand. As I stood before the throne, still wrapped in the garments of glory, another figure approached. The angel Pravil, scribe of the Most High. His hands glowed with the light of countless dawns, and in his arms he carried scrolls without number. One by one, he set them before me. 366 books, their covers bound in living gold, their pages like sheets of light. Each seemed to breathe, the words upon them shifting and shimmering as if written by the hand of eternity itself. These, Pravil said, contain the fullness of the wisdom of heaven and earth, the measure of the stars, the paths of the seas, the laws of time and space. Here is written the rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth and death of every soul, and the appointed end of all things. I touched the first page, and knowledge rushed into me like a flood, the hidden harmonies that bind the universe, the unseen threads that tie the heart of man to the breath of God. I saw how every moment, every life is woven into a tapestry whose pattern only the Almighty can see. Then, the voice of God came again. Before the foundation of the world, I knew every soul. I formed them. I numbered their days. I prepared their place in eternity. None are hidden from me, not the righteous who dwell in light, nor the wicked who flee to the shadows. All will stand before my throne, and my judgment will be perfect. I bowed low, knowing what had been entrusted to me was not for my keeping alone. This wisdom was a charge, a message for those still walking the earth before the days of their choosing are gone. The vision faded, and I found myself beside Gabriel, his presence both a wall of fire and a well of peace. Before me lay the scrolls, the wisdom of heaven now placed in mortal hands. Then came the command, clear and irresistible. Write all you have seen, Enoch. Record it for the generations yet unborn, that they may know the works of the Most High and choose the path of life. I understood then, my journey was not an honor for myself alone. It was a burden to carry back to the world of men. I returned with the memory of rivers of fire and gardens of light, of chains that bind the rebellious and crowns awaiting the faithful. I had seen the throne from which all creation flows, and I knew beyond all doubt, God reigns supreme. His judgment is certain. His reward is eternal. Now the vision is in your hands. What will you do with it? Will you turn away, or will you walk the narrow road while there is still time? And if you would walk with us through more mysteries hidden in the pages of Scripture, subscribe, for there are realms yet to be unveiled, and secrets even Enoch could not write. The vision is sealed within me like fire in my bones. I have returned to the world of men, but the heavens have marked me forever.